welcome to a Wild Mystery Podcast Appears, where we discuss mysteries, histories, and occasionally conspiracies. I'm your host, Ollie.
And I'm your co-host, Belle.
Today we'll be discussing the disappearance of Kyron Horman, a 7-year-old boy who disappeared in 2010 in Portland, Oregon.
Today's content warnings are as follows: child disappearance, drunk driving and alcoholism, divorce, separation, cheating, and child endangerment. If you feel that you cannot process any of these topics today, we encourage you to check out one of our other episodes. Mm-hmm. The opinions expressed in this podcast are the sole views and opinions of Belle and Ollie with a Wild Mystery Podcast Appears. These views are not intended to harm, offend, defame, slander, or negatively represent any individuals involved in a case.
And then just as a kind of a warning, in this one there is a lot of he said, she said. There are not a whole lot of things that can be 100% conclusively proven. So basically, if I don't straight up tell you that something is proven by phone records or security cameras or whatever, it wasn't. And this does get convoluted at points. So Belle, I'm relying on you to stop me if you don't understand what's happening.
Duly noted. I will do that.
Okay. And we, just for everybody's reference at the starting here, if we reference pictures, I've put together a folder of pictures for us to look at. They're going to be the same pictures that we post. Mm-hmm. We also, I've literally written down all the names that are involved in this case, because there are a lot of them. So
sit down, get a cup of tea, get a cup of hot chocolate, as I believe today is going to be a pretty lengthy episode.
I'm trying not to make it that lengthy, but it might be kind of confusing, and I will try, if I have to check my notes on who's who, I will tell you who's who, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm with you. I understand.
Okay. So Kyron Horman was born on September 9th in 2002. In 2010, he was 7 years old and in second grade. He was kind of a typical 7-year-old. His mom described him as a typical 7-year-old who gets dirty all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He had brown hair, blue eyes, he wore glasses, and he has a V-shaped strawberry-colored birthmark on his forehead. And I might switch between had and has, because we don't know if he's alive or not.
Okay.
So Kyron's mom is Desiree Young, and his dad is Kyron Horman. They were married for a while, but then when Desiree was 8 months pregnant with Kyron, she discovered Kyron was cheating on her.
Oh.
So they separated, and were... By 2010, they had both remarried, living in separate towns, and both of their spouses, their new spouses, had kids from other marriages.
Mm.
So this is kind of I'm not mentioning most of the children in this case because it just gets so complicated, you know?
Makes sense.
But, generally speaking, this is a very large family.
Okay.
That had a lot of stuff going on.
Gotcha.
So, Desiree his mom lived in Medford, Oregon, and Kane, and usually Kyron, both lived in Portland, Oregon, which is about a 4 to 5 hour trip, depending on the source.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kane's wife at the time, in 2010, was Terry Moulton Horman. So she either goes, depending on at what point this is, she was either Terry Horman or she was Terry Moulton.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same woman that he was cheating on Desiree with.
Mm-hmm.
So they married in 2007. And then Desiree, Kyron's mom's new husband, his name is Tony. I don't have a last name, but I'm assuming it's Young. So Kyron lived with Kane and Terry the majority of the time. So Desiree, the situation here is that Desiree had severe kidney problems. She had actually been diagnosed with kidney failure in 2004. And she, at the time, she was very sick and thought it was best that he lived with his dad. So she was quoted as saying, "I had gotten to the point where I was in the hospital usually 3 or 4 times throughout the year. I was so sick that I was passing out at times." So because of that, she was really worried that Kyron wasn't really safest when he was staying with her. She specifically mentioned that he was afraid that he could hurt himself while she was passed out and couldn't keep an eye on him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So this was 2004. He was born in 2002, so he was 2 at the time, you know? So she ended up going to Canada for treatment, and during that time temporarily gave full custody to Kane. But then when she got back, she was, like, still recovering and, like, completely swamped with medical bills.
Makes sense.
And they kind of mutually decided it's probably best if he stays here, stays there. But they still spent time together when they could. Usually, from what it sounded like, Desiree would come into Portland to visit him, but then every now and then he would go up and visit her.
What are you doing this, ma'am?
Then Kyron and Kane, his dad, were super close anyway. Kane, was quoted as saying, "He's the kind of son that every father hopes they're going to have."
Aww.
And then, so Desiree worked in the fraud department of a bank. Tony, her wife, her husband worked as a detective in Medford and apparently kind of got a case from her every now and then, and that's kind of how they met, it sounded like. And Kyron got along really, really well with Tony and wanted to be a detective someday when he grew up. Kane's wife, Terry, was super active in Kyron's life as well. Obviously, they lived in the same house. So she was described as an attentive parent, active in his school. She had a son from a previous marriage who was older than Kyron and lived with them for a brief period of time, but he and Kane didn't get along well, and the son ended up moving out. It, in various sources, it's described as like he was kicked out or whatever, but like, I think he was a child, so I don't think it was really that severe.
Yeah.
And then Terry and Kane also had a daughter together, Kiara, who was born in 2008, which is the year after they married. I don't know, actually how long it was. Then Kane worked as a software engineer, and Terry was a stay-at-home mom who had previously worked as both a substitute teacher and also a bodybuilder. So, like, yeah.
Okay.
Well-rounded woman.
Yeah.
So, we got that.
Yeah.
There's lots of T and K names in these.
Gotcha.
Anyway. So, on June 4th, 2010, there was a science fair at Kyron's school, Skyline Elementary. Kyron did a project on the red-eyed tree frog, which I thought was adorable, honestly. I love frogs, and I really enjoyed red-eyed tree frogs when I was about that age, too. So, like...
Yeah.
So Terry, again, his stepmom, took him to school, said it was a normal day. They got there a little bit after 8, maybe 8:15, but because of the science fair, school wasn't starting that day until 10. Also because of the science fair, people were kind of like coming in and out a lot more than usual, coming and going. Usually the school had a policy that parents checked in and out when they came in, but because of the science fair, that policy was relaxed and people were just kind of coming in and out. Also because of the science fair. Like, Terry drove him to school instead of putting him on the bus, which was the usual routine. So Terry brings him in, she stays for a bit. She takes the last photo of him that was ever taken, which, if you go to our pics, yep, that's that. I mean, it's the first 2, honestly, because that second one is just, they had zoomed in on his face and kind of cleared it up a bit. But you can see he's wearing a black CSI shirt with green lettering and some green and blue kind of imagery on it, standing in front of his project on the red-eyed tree frog.
You did a good job.
Yeah. And if you've ever heard of this case before, you've seen this picture.
I actually have never heard of this case before, surprisingly.
So, this school had 2 floors, and Kyron's classroom was on the 2nd floor. So, Terry was carrying Kiara at the time, who was 18 months old, by the way, and a diaper bag. So they take the stairs up, Kyron beats her up the stairs, and then Terry sees him get to the classroom door. Nowhere in this have I heard that she saw him go into the classroom. I don't know how big a difference that makes, but it did strike me as something that she always said she saw him get to the classroom door. I've never seen her say she saw him go inside the classroom. So.
Yeah, I wonder if that's just like a language thing.
It might be, and she's just like, I saw him get to the door and then I turned around and, headed downstairs. Yeah. But he's in his school, I don't know how long he's been going here. But it is
He's
June.
7, so if he was there from
So this is most of the way through the school year,
Yeah.
So she's
June?
Yeah, because June, the school year starts in August.
Yeah, so this would have been the end of the year.
Yeah, so it's most of the way through the school year.
Well, no, that's my point, though, is school for here ends in May.
Oh, yeah. June 4th, so it must have been going to end soon, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sorry.
Whoops. Okay. Oh, I see where you read that you were laughing.
Yeah. Sorry.
So...
I try not to read ahead, but you did it to me too a couple of times.
Yeah, this is where it starts to get frustrating.
Okay.
So, Terry sees him get to his classroom door, and then she kind of heads out at around 8:45. She's got the baby. And by the way, I should mention at this point, Kiara did have, it sounded like a cold and maybe an ear infection at this point.
Okay.
So, Kiara it sounded like especially fussy this day.
Gotcha.
Pain in her ear, had a bit of a cold, So at 10, which again is when classes were starting that day, Kyron's teacher realizes that he isn't there, so he's marked as absent, and they call the parents. No, they didn't. They actually didn't communicate with the parents at all. So he's marked as absent.
Great.
And that's it. His project's there, his backpack and jacket were there, hung up in the classroom all day. So why this didn't seem weird to anybody is fucking beyond me.
Now, granted, I know that teachers have a lot of people or a lot of kids in their classroom.
So, I'm thinking initially this teacher probably, I think it's a she, didn't even realize that his stuff was there and he wasn't. But when everybody else left, she should have realized.
Yeah.
But we actually are going to get just a tiny bit into that later. Not so much because the school absolutely did fuck up here.
Yeah, no, for sure.
He was 7. They totally... If you are not from America, I've seen people in America, or people who have covered this case outside of America say, I don't know if it's a thing in America. No, in America, they are supposed to call.
Yep, no, there's supposed to be communication.
He's 7. He's not even in the double digits.
Yeah.
And even when I was in high school, if I missed a class, there would be an automated call. And, granted, it would be after school that the automated call would go out. Even if they knew I was going to be out because we had called beforehand. But anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, at about 2 p.m., Kane gets home from work. And then at around 3:15, the whole family, Kane, Terry, and Kiara, walk down to the corner where the bus stop is. And at 3:30 is usually when Kyron got off the bus on his way home. But the bus driver says he never got on. Which, again, this is the kind of thing, bus drivers, they recognize the kids, They pay attention.
Yeah.
So they're really worried, and Terry calls the school at 3:45. That is when everybody discovers he's marked absent. The school secretary realizes someone here fucked up, and the police are called at 3:45 3:46. So again, Terry calls at 3:45.
Yeah, which the 15-minute difference probably accounts for a
them,
little bit of time waiting at the bus stop.
Yeah, waiting at the bus stop, waiting for him to get off.
And then walking back.
talking to the bus driver. She and Kane going, oh, did somebody pick him up? Did we talk to somebody? Like, you know,
Did
you talk to somebody? No, I didn't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Like, did you? Like, you know, like them trying to figure out what's going on, rationalize it, and then realizing we can't rationalize this. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And especially Kane, just like this, you know, boy that he, by all intents and purposes, like, from what I've seen, just like adores this kid. Mm-hmm. And he's like,
just, yeah.
You know, but he seemed very down to earth. So the secretary calls the school the minute after Terry calls the police. Sorry. The minute after Terry calls the school. Mm-hmm. And Kyron is reported as a missing person. That same night, a automated call goes out to parents in the Portland School District. Part of the call included the line, Skyline second grader Kyron Horman did not arrive home from school today. Mm. So, Desiree and Tony immediately, that's his mom and
stepdad.
Yeah. They immediately come out to Portland, or start out, you know, it takes them a few hours, start to come to Portland to help with the investigation, and of course, you know, just be there. So, we're going to get into what happens next, but before that, we're going to stop for some ads. So, the search that ensued was run by the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, and it was, depending on the source, it was either the largest search effort in Oregon history, or it was one of the largest.
Wow.
It was underway by 4:30, which is 45 minutes after that call came in, basically.
Damn.
And it continued into the night.
That's actually really impressive.
Yeah,
Good response time.
Like, the...
all things considered.
Everybody did everything right here except the school.
Yeah.
When they initially didn't contact the parents about
the absence.
That is the only thing that was done wrong here that delayed this response.
Because if we consider even just at around 9 a.m., mm-hmm. that's 3, 6, 7, almost 7 hours of lead time.
Yeah. 6. So yeah, 7 hours-ish.
6 to 7,
6, 7.
Yeah, because if you consider 3:46, yeah. So, yeah.
So they searched, initially at least, a radius of 2 miles around the school, and then they also searched Sauvie Island, which is an island that is 6 miles from the school, was apparently, like, kind of just a lot of marsh area. Mm. So the search lasted a total of 10 days, and included over 1,300 searchers. Mm. Initially, like kind of right off the bat, a $25,000 reward was offered for information pertaining to Kyron's whereabouts. His teachers, friends, families, mm-hmm. They all didn't, none of them thought that he would have left on his own. Like, none of them really thought that that was possible. Mm-hmm. He was described as kind of like a shy, timid kid. And it was a super exciting day, you know, like the classes were starting late, there was a science fair, like, I mean, he had an hour and 15 minutes that he was just roaming around, no parents, like, no, mm-hmm. This was a cool day this should have been a cool day for him, you know? Yeah. And everybody thought, like, and this was genuinely the kind of thing where police asked around, everybody said, no, he wouldn't have left, and police said, okay, then he didn't. And they jumped on that right away. Mm-hmm. Immediately, police were on this, you know? And this is like, I feel like there are a lot of cases that are unsolved because the police fucked up. Mm-hmm. Like, and I'm not saying there are a lot of cases in which the police fucked up. I'm saying a lot of the cases that are unsolved because the police fucked up.
Yeah.
Or whatever investigator fucked up, you know? Mm-hmm. This is not one of those cases, and that's what makes it so baffling in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the school unfortunately also didn't have CCTV. I would not be surprised if they have installed it since. But
Probably.
in a statement, Terry, again the stepmom, claims that she saw a stranger in the school but was unable to describe this stranger. And then immediate interest was taken in the people around Kyron, which is, as per usual, and especially Terry, as she was the last person to ever see him.
Mm-hmm.
The police, to ever, conclusively see him. The police department had placed this is really weird to me, and I'm not 100% sure it's true, but apparently there is a book that claims that the police department placed a wire on Kane that night, his dad, when he went home, so that they could hear the conversations between the family members within the home on the night of the disappearance. And from what it sounded like Kane knew. They didn't just, bug him. So...
Bug him unknowingly.
Yeah. But it didn't sound like,
What
Terry...
year was this?
What?
What year was this?
2010.
Okay.
It did not sound like Terry, Desiree, or Tony knew. But Tony was a detective, so I will just throw that out there. I don't want to say he probably noticed, but it's possible.
Yeah, depending. It's
So, depending on how obvious it was.
Mm-hmm.
So on the 10th day of the search, the case was reclassified as a criminal investigation. So again, on top of it, from day 1 and also day 10. There were thousands of tips and leads that were investigated to no end, and the police department also looked into sex predators, family, extended family, family friends, visitors to the school, on and around the day of the science fair, employees of the school, tons and tons and tons of people were ruled out.
Mm-hmm.
They also received help from the FBI and other law enforcement agencies, again, pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
So, there's really only one theory that people
seem to think.
Terry has never been named as a suspect, but a lot of people feel that she is acting super sketchy around the case. So, I want to go through her timeline real quick. And this timeline gets a little messy, so stay with me.
Okay.
So at around 8:45, Terry claims that she left the school, right?
Mm-hmm.
At around 9:15, she leaves the first Fred Meyer that she went to. So, and this is confirmed by CCTV. And then around 9:45 or 10, between 9:45 and 10, depending on the source, CCTV confirms that she leaves the second Fred Meyer that she dropped by. Mm-hmm. She said that she was...
For clarification, Fred Meyer's is a grocery store.
Yes.
For those who might be on the south.
Yeah.
It's a Kroger company.
Yeah, it is.
Helps.
So she claims that she went to these two different stores because she was looking for a specific cold medicine for her daughter, which, honestly, I've done.
Yeah.
Things like that. So, I can't call that sketchy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So between 12 and 12:30, Terry was at the gym, but she was also potentially there as early as 11:30 to 12:30. So by 1:20, she was home in order to post the picture of Kyron on Facebook, which, is confirmed by the Facebook timestamp.
And it wasn't posted, were they able to confirm the IP address at the time of the post, or?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they looked into that.
Probably.
Because I'm 100% sure they have, actually.
Probably,
but,
yeah.
Belle, before we move on, do you have any thoughts about that timeline?
So, I'm imagining that they looked into the timeline and the distance in between the school and the stores, because my first thought was, okay, trying to factor in time to put baby in a car seat.
Take baby out of car seat.
Yep. Drive time. Shop and then leave. Did she leave her goddamn kid in the car?
I don't think she
30
did.
30 minutes?
Because there was at least one witness stated on her way back to her car, she was holding Kiara. So I'm pretty sure she took Kiara in. What I will say in defense of that is that if she was running in exclusively for the cold medicine, I can imagine that wouldn't take very long, you know?
Yeah.
And I also couldn't find anywhere where it said what time she arrived at the Fred Meyer, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it was 100% confirmed by CCTV that she left at 9:15.
So there's one Fred Meyer's that's 11 minutes from there.
Okay.
And another one that is...
So round up to 15 minutes. That leaves her another 15 minutes to...
Oh, damn, there's another one. How many goddamn Fred Meyers do they have in the driving area of this one? Jesus. Because that's 18 minutes, that's 11, and that's 19. And there's another one that's 24. Mm-hmm. Look how many fucking Fred Meyers are in this area. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So that was kind of one of the first things that I was thought of looking based on the timeline. The other thing is, if you have a sick kid, why are you going to the gym?
That's another thing.
And that isn't corroborated by CCTV or anything, I assume.
The CCTV proves she was at the gym, and there were also witnesses at the gym who say she was there. Mm-hmm. I don't know why it is so sketchy when she arrived at the gym, but she definitely left around 12:30.
Yeah. Okay. And then, I mean, I made my comments about the posting on Facebook, mm-hmm. which, you know, there's that. And then I think there's something to be said about the fact that she's never officially been named as a suspect. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's odd that I feel like a lot of parents who are pretty involved in their children's school would talk to their teacher upon getting mm-hmm. them set up in their classroom. So those are my my current commentary for now, and I will reserve judgment for now.
Yeah, and I do, like, you know, there is always the fact that we could pull up that Kiara was sick. Like, she mm-hmm. has a sick 18-month-old that she's dealing with on top of Kyron, who can more or less handle himself, you know? So Terry claims that Kiara had an earache. So you didn't bring this up because maybe you didn't notice, but there is a large gap of time between leaving the second Fred Meyer and arriving at the gym.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of how you looked at it, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if she leaves...
Well, that and even from the... Well, no, because that's when she arrived at the gym, not when she mm-hmm. went home.
So even if you take into account, like, maybe she left the Fred Meyer at the latest time that I read, which was 10, mm-hmm. and maybe she arrived at the gym at the earliest time that I saw, which was 11:30.
That's an hour and a half of unaccounted time.
Yes. And if you actually look at I think generally the police are quoted as saying she left the second Fred Meyer at around 9:45 and arrived at the gym at noon-ish. Mm-hmm. Maybe 15 minutes before noon is, I think, the earliest.
Okay.
I've seen the police quoted as saying.
Mm-hmm.
But, and again, take all of this with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But that is still,
because, I mean, like, if she had dropped the baby off with a babysitter, that would have counted that, but then she would have said that. But then at mm-hmm. the same time, you can't take a sick child into your gym's daycare.
That is a good point, yeah. I don't know if... Well, no.
Even if it's just an earache, because they can't prove that that's why they're sick.
Yeah. Well, she also had cold medicine.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of people saying Kiara was just sick. Like, she was actually mm-hmm. genuinely had a cold, had something.
Yeah.
So, Terry claims that Kiara had an earache, and she spent that, like, hour and a half to 2 hours between leaving the second store and arriving at the gym, driving around to try and soothe it so that she would sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what I will say is, as somebody who has lived in the world, I have absolutely heard before that parents swear by driving their kids around.
I've done it.
Yeah, especially to soothe an earache.
I've done that with my niece before when I was able to drive in. Well, actually, no, that's not true because she was too young. I was in the car when we did that with my niece, I should say.
And it is something that I have genuinely heard people say that, like, it's just I think it's kind of I don't know that it's necessarily a medical thing, but yeah. And either way, it's like, I talked to my mom about this and she basically said, like, driving a kid around, it's like they're being rocked, So a lot of parents will just use it to get their kids to sleep. And if Kiara was sick, maybe she wasn't sleeping well, So that is a reasonable, I don't want to call it an excuse. It's a reasonable explanation, But to your point, then she did go to the gym.
Yep.
And why, I've seen this, that, like, why would you, once your kid finally gets to sleep, why would you then go and take them to a daycare? And could you?
Mm-hmm.
So she stayed at the gym long enough to speak to a few other members of the gym. One of the members may have seen a cut on her leg, which Terry then said was from a weightlifting accident. Now, it is a fact, she was into bodybuilding, so she did lift weights.
Mm-hmm.
And some sources say she stayed for like half an hour, which is not a long time.
No.
And a couple of people have said throughout this that she made a point to talk to them. And I want to be really careful about that because I don't know what she was like normally.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, it was because it's more like you and me, like, are we going to actively try and talk with people or who are next to us at the gym? Or is it like, oh my god, hey, I haven't seen you in so long, how are you doing?
And she was a stay-at-home mom, so I think it's entirely possible that she was a little bit starved for conversation
social
outside of her family,
outside
adult
of
conversation.
Yes.
And in one or two of these persons, and this, like, it's not just at the gym that people have said this. I should also specify that some people have said literally at the stores, at the parking lots, that she made a point to stop and talk to them. And
so they felt that she was making a point of trying to be seen.
Yeah. And one of the people that she talked to at the grocery store said that she also made a point while she had her sick baby in her arms, which is, like, literally quote from this person, while she had her sick baby, made a point to show her the picture that she had taken of Kyron that morning. Which you could argue is suspicious, or you could argue is a proud mom. Yeah. So.
Yeah, okay.
So.
I'm reserving judgment.
Yeah, we'll get there. So, upon being contacted about the disappearance, Desiree had called, Desiree being Kyron's mom, called Terry to say that Desiree and Tony, her husband, I'm telling you with these T names, that they were getting prepared to leave. And Desiree says that Terry seemed surprised that they were planning on coming up. Which again could be shock, could be not fully understanding the gravity of the situation, could be suspicious. And generally speaking, Desiree and Tony both thought that Terry's behavior was, quote, strange. Like, they literally described it as strange multiple times.
Okay.
That's the word they used. Within a few hours, Desiree was already suspicious that Terry wasn't being 100% honest. She also may have said that Terry was especially chatty that day. I could not find a direct quote from her. Or, like, basically this has been like, I have heard people saying that she said this. I have not actually seen her say this, or an article quoting her saying this. You know what I mean? So these people say that Terry was especially chatty specifically to Desiree that day, like, would call her up, say she'd posted pictures of Kyron, that kind of thing. which apparently wasn't normal for her.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts on this is that if it's true, like, maybe she's kind of gloating a bit. Like, some people say that they didn't have a great relationship, these two. So, and I mean, to be honest, like...
Not a lot of...
Well, and Kane was cheating on Desiree with Terry. So, yeah. I would not be surprised if they didn't have a great relationship.
Hold on. Kane was cheating on Desiree with Terry.
With Terry, while he and Desiree were married.
Yes. You said Desiree was cheating on Kane with Terry. I was like, wait a
plot
second.
Twist, yeah.
Like,
no.
Whoa.
So...
And I also might have just heard you wrong, because there's...
Who knows?
Lots of people involved.
There's lots of names involved in this, yes. And we're only getting started.
Yeah.
So, eventually, Desiree actually went on air imploring Terry to fully cooperate with the investigation. Like, that is the wording that she used. She did not believe that Terry was cooperating with the investigation.
Really?
So, there's also that, like, the other thing that was sketchy to a lot of people is that she said she saw a stranger in the school. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have said, did you know every person who was ever at the school?
Yeah.
Especially on this day of the science fair when there are a lot more parents around than usual, a lot more family members.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wouldn't most people be strangers?
Yeah.
And she also could not describe this person. Couldn't even give enough information for a police sketch, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, eyewitnesses at the school also told Desiree, and this is something Desiree is quoted as saying, I have never seen this from the police. I'm not saying that I doubt Desiree, because I don't. But, I just wanted to, air that. That the police have never said that. But then, for a lot of this, I genuinely do think the police are keeping a lot close to the vest.
Makes sense.
Anyway. So, eyewitnesses at the school told Desiree that they saw Terry leave out the side door with Kyron on this day. One of Kyron's friends saw him with Terry outside the school as they were leaving.
Mm.
Kyron's teacher claims that she was not alarmed when Kyron wasn't in his seat because Terry had told her that he had a doctor's appointment. I don't know what the timeline of this is supposed to be. This is also, I have seen people quoting this teacher. This is not like that they directly interviewed this teacher. But Terry also claims that the appointment was for the following Friday and that there was a miscommunication somewhere in this conversation that they had. That the teacher misunderstood. It wasn't for that day. But she had just mentioned in passing he's got a doctor's appointment and, Either way, I would say why the hell would he not take his jacket and his backpack to a doctor's appointment? But anyway. There were also, some inconsistent statements that Terry made to the police. I gave that one timeline because it is the best I could come up with.
Mm-hmm.
But there were many others. And Terry, a lot of the timeline that she initially gave didn't line up with CCTV and phone evidence. Because, she had a cell phone at this point, right? So, on that day, Terry also borrowed Kane's white pickup truck, which is something she never really did because she loved her own red Mustang. What I will say, though, is that a red Mustang is a pretty fancy car. Mm-hmm. And if Kiara was sick, maybe that was the reason that she didn't want, I've got all these kids and I love my car and this kid might puke in it. So
yeah,
I would rather take my husband's car that I don't care as much about,
Yeah.
So on the flyer, throughout this whole thing, the sheriff's department released a bunch of different flyers. They released questionnaires for the school's parents and teachers and staff and stuff. On the flyer, they had pictures, or on one of the flyers, they had pictures of Terry in the truck that she was driving, implying that, and then on the questionnaires, they asked people to come forward with sightings of her and the truck on the day and, what times and where they saw them and stuff. My thoughts here, because this was apparently in the very early days of the investigation, I'm thinking likely their idea here was that they were trying to confirm her timeline, confirm her alibi, basically, because in that hour and a half to 2 hours, she doesn't have an alibi, you know? Because her 18-month-old can't confirm her alibi.
Right.
So, again, her phone records didn't match up with where she said she was at what time. It was the timing that was specifically, I guess, giving the police
Pause.
a headache. Between 9:45 and 12ish, her phone pinged at a tower that was close to that island that I mentioned earlier. Sauvie Island. So this was like a remote area where a few, like 2 or 3 rivers met up, which created acres of marshy woodland. There was an extended search over the area, which turned up nothing. However, on the other side of this tower, for those of you who don't know how pinging off towers work, your phone, like, connects...
It's within a radius.
Yeah, connects to a tower.
Or a circumference, yeah.
But because it pinged off, it just pinged off the tower. Like, you don't know where the phone is based on that ping.
Yeah.
It's just like the tower is saying, this
You're
is
within
the closest
the
tower.
vicinity.
Yeah. Like, this is where you would be making calls through, basically, is this tower. So, on the other area, or on the other side of that same tower, at the same distance, there were back roads that were close to the Horman home, which matches up with her, where she said she was when she was driving around trying to calm Kiara's earache. This also raises the question, though, if this was where she was, why wasn't she driving around close to the gym? Why, and of course, why would she take her kid to the gym daycare after driving around for 2 hours close to the home to try and get her to sleep? But of course, all of this is not even circumstantial. You know what I mean? Like, it's conjecture. So, some investigators also thought her behavior was odd in the following days. Some of them thought that she wasn't, like, grieving, acting, which, again, all of this is, like, I don't like to use this as evidence, because you don't know how people are grieving behind the scenes, you know?
Right, yeah.
Desiree's husband, Tony, as we mentioned, was a detective. And the day or two after the disappearance, he was trying to kind of prep everybody else for what the investigation was going to be like. Kind of explaining... He said he explained, like, our private lives aren't private anymore. Whatever the police want to know, we need to tell them. We need to be comfortable with telling them. And he and Desiree thought that Terry kind of prickled at that. Like, she didn't like the idea of being questioned. And she kind of, like, expressed displeasure. And Tony and Desiree thought it seemed like she felt like she was being targeted. Which is sketchy. But especially, they thought it was especially weird so early in the investigation. So, there was, like, also a lot of weirdness surrounding the lie detectors. People, like, so, I'll preface this with lie detector tests are not usually admissible in court. They're not really, like, scientifically proven. They really just measure your body's response to being questioned.
Yep.
So there are lots of ways to fake them. There are lots of ways to, like...
Pass them,
make them inconclusive. And, again, they are almost never admissible in court. So, Terry ended up kind of, quote-unquote, taking 3 of them. The police told her that she failed twice. Again, police can lie about that. If you didn't know, they can legally lie to you about that. So...
Be advised.
Yeah. Protect yourself.
Get a lawyer.
The police said that she failed twice, and then she walked out in frustration on the 3rd, which is, I think, confirmed by her. Terry claims that she is hard of hearing. I'm not her doctor, so I can't confirm this 100%, but I, am inclined to believe her. And she also claimed that the people that were taking the first polygraph weren't really accommodating to that. They were kind of sitting out of her line of sight, so she couldn't read their lips and see their expressions, which was detrimental to her understanding of what they were asking and was stressing her out and that kind of thing. So the second one, I didn't see her specify why. I just heard that she said that they weren't doing a good job. This was on Dr. Phil, by the way, that she explained all of this. So,
Okay.
She also has had a past record. She was arrested for DUI in the past. One time she had her older son in the car, which led to a reckless endangerment charge. And this is the same kid that
didn't get along with
Kane.
Kane.
Yeah.
Kane?
Kane. Kane is the
Dad,
yes.
I thought you said earlier that he didn't get along well with Kyron.
No, it was Kane that...
Okay.
See, there are lots of K names, and there are lots of T names.
Yeah.
So again, stop me.
Okay.
So...
I'm with you.
And also, just out of the blue, may have been involved in a murder-for-hire plot in 1990. I have heard very little about that. I've, literally no more information on that than that.
You searched for it specifically? And
I searched for some of, the court cases and stuff, because that was happening fairly recently. But, I mean, there's a little bit more information where people have said, people have talked about what, the specifics around who was being murdered, what their relationship was. I didn't necessarily think that was important because it didn't have anything to do with Kane, Kyron. This was before Terry met Kane. So, but, in the past.
The alleged murder-for-hire plot targeted a man named Sean Ray, who was Horman's boyfriend at the time. And
That's Terry Horman's.
Yes. Reyes said he remembered a strange man with a gun coming after him. And that was
and
an article from April 19th of 2017.
From what I remember, he also claimed that Terry told him he's here for you. So... Anyway, another reason, though, that she may have been cagey about the police getting into her business was that she was cheating on Kane with one of his friends from high school.
What a dick.
Yeah.
Or what a...
So,
yeah.
She was sexting, emailing this guy, including explicit photos. This guy, by the way, is named Michael Cook. Add that to the list of the names, Lots of these were also in the days after Kyron went missing. So, and then some sources also say that these didn't happen until early July, while some sources claim they were already in this relationship before Kyron went missing. So, apparently she did some of this on a burner phone that she got after Kyron went missing, so that the sheriff's department couldn't listen in. Read, whatever. And then, Jesus Christ, this gets even more wild. So, a few weeks after the disappearance, in late June, Kane moves out of the house, taking Kiara with him. That day, the police department had come to him and told him that a landscaper, Rodolfo Sanchez, had come to them saying Terry had tried to hire him to kill Kane that January. Does that make sense?
It makes sense in the essence of the words that you said.
Yeah.
And that is where the sense ends.
Yeah. So again, this is unconfirmed. She hasn't been charged with anything, to my knowledge. But the police department felt confident enough to come forward with it to Kane and also go public with it after everybody questioned why Kane and Kiara had moved out of the house, because this was a pretty high-profile case. So the police also tried to corner her by setting up a sting with Rodolfo, but she then turned him in to the police, saying he was blackmailing her because she rejected him. So Kane then also filed for divorce and a restraining order in late June, and then the divorce and custody were settled in 2014, and Kane now has full custody of Kiara. Terry initially was only allowed supervised visits. Now, I don't know if she's even allowed that. So, I just wanted everybody to know that Kiara is out of out of that situation. So Michael Cook, who is again the guy that Terry was sexting, also after Kane left, took a picture of Kane's home, Kane's new home, and did a Google search for the address because Terry asked him to. And he claims that he never would have gone any farther than that. I know this is convoluted and confusing and weird. But...
Okay.
Yeah. When Kane moved out, Dee Dee Spiker, a gardener and friend of Terry's, moved in. Some sources say that Dee Dee offered Terry personal advice that, quote, wasn't in Kyron's best interest, but I have no idea what that means. Like, I don't know what that advice was. The sheriff's department says that her coworkers said, that Dee Dee's coworkers had said that between 11 and 1, she was not at work. Despite being there prepping for a garden show for the rest of the day. Apparently, they tried calling her on 2 different numbers when they got together for lunch, but she didn't answer. And she later claimed that she left her phone in her truck and just didn't notice people calling for her because she was out on the grounds working. This is again Dee Dee. So, in a deposition in October of 2012, she was asked 142 questions and refused to answer any of them. These questions included refusing to identify a photo of Kyron and refusing to say whether or not she had met Kyron or whether she had met Kane. So Dee Dee apparently either also got a burner phone around this time or she assisted Terry in purchasing hers. So, we've already kind of covered that Desiree and Tony believe that Terry had something to do with this. Kane now also believes Terry either harmed or even killed Kyron. Kane testified that Terry was an alcoholic, suffered from postpartum depression, after giving birth to Kiara, that is, and then also that her behavior changed after giving birth to Kiara. Some sources say that she was very upset that her older son had to move out of the house. Some sources don't really mention that. So. And then some other people came forward saying that they saw an unidentified individual in Terry's truck in the school parking lot the day that Kyron disappeared, but this person may not have actually existed. Desiree claims that Terry was hostile towards Kyron, even saying she hated my son. Terry had sent, like, all these emails before the disappearance, and they all came out in court. And Desiree claims that they reveal Kane may have been about to leave her and that she blamed Kyron. Desiree claims that Terry was afraid Kane was about to leave Terry. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. So, in one of these emails, she apparently claims that she was planning, or that Kane, was planning on leaving and taking Kiara. But there was no proof that these were sent. We don't have screenshots. We don't have transcripts, blah, blah, blah. Which, again, could be that they haven't been released because of police stuff,
Police things, yeah.
Because there's an active investigation. Well, it may not be active, but it is open. So, Terry and Kane were fighting at this time, and apparently they had a really big fight the night before Kyron disappeared, which is interesting, if true. Now, Terry has completely changed her life. She goes by Terry Moulton. Some sources say that she was married in 2019. I'm not 100% sure that that's true. She's moved, all of that. She once tried to legally change her name to Claire Stella Sullivan, but was denied by the judge. One author claims that this name was a character in a mystery novel that was suspected of killing her husband and kid and was later proven innocent. Yeah, I meant to do more research on this and I didn't. The judge in this case stated that as long as Kyron's case was unsolved, it was not in the public's best interest for her to change her name.
There is a book character called Stella Sullivan.
Okay. So, she has also been arrested at least twice after Kyron's disappearance. And one of these 2 times was for stealing a gun from a roommate.
Great.
Yeah. She has had a boyfriend since, who has since filed a restraining order against her, claiming that she held a knife to his throat and tried to kill him.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And then there's also, if you Google the name Terry Moulton Horman, you may come across something stating that somebody with the same name, I think Terry Moulton, embezzled a whole bunch of money from a company, but I was not able to confirm it's the same person. So, take that with a big grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know that was a lot, so we are going to take one more ad break. In 2012, Desiree filed a lawsuit, or a civil suit, against Terry, accusing her of kidnapping Kyron and demanding to know the location of his body, which shows you what she expects happens.
Yeah.
She was hoping that it would force Terry to testify under oath, but Terry apparently planned on pleading the fifth to everything. If you never heard that, by the way, this occurred to me when I was doing research that people who aren't from America might not realize what that means. The Fifth Amendment is the right to remain silent, which is guaranteeing that people can't be compelled by a government entity to provide info that would discriminate themselves, or incriminate, themselves. So, the thing about pleading the fifth is that you are saying, I don't want to answer this because it will provide info that will incriminate me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and they probably want a home run on her.
Yeah. So, the sheriff's department also didn't want this to go to trial either, because it would mean that they might have to give up any information that they had, including things that they were intentionally keeping back. So the investigation was reopened in 2017. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released an age progression 12 years after the disappearance in 2022, which is this year, showing what he may look like at 29, or at 19. So they were using photos that were collected by the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department, and there have also been a couple of others released over the years. So that's, if you look in the thing, that's the last picture that I've got. So I'll totally post this, but remember I've heard some people say that he probably wouldn't be wearing glasses anymore, so it's possible that he was wearing glasses for something that might have gotten better. So keep that in mind, I guess.
Yeah.
Then, they release a new one every few years, so if you're listening in, 2050, maybe check again, but the NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has been the organization posting them, so, if you check there, you'll find the most updated one. So Desiree says, I thought that this was heartbreaking, so I thought I would add it. She said that seeing the age progression is rough, quote, because you see the life that you're missing out on, end quote. So it's, she appreciates that it's doing something, but she's just, broken up that she can't be there. Yeah. His DNA is being compared against the National DNA Database. His dental records have been uploading to the National Missing and Unidentified Person System, NamUs. Desiree also comes to the school for a press conference, the Skyline Elementary, every year for a press conference to raise awareness. This year, 2010, 2010, 2022. It's been 12 years. The reward for any information leading to the resolution of the case was raised to $50,000 a month after his disappearance, and remains that to this day. So, in this one, I think it is likely that the police have a strong suspicion but are not prosecuting because they don't have a body.
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes it really hard to effectively prosecute someone
mm-hmm.
without a body.
Yeah.
Without 100% proof that this person is dead. Which is hard. So before I get too much into that, thoughts? I have suspicion.
I mean, I can't imagine being in Desiree's shoes knowing that this woman, or Kane's shoes,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that...
Well, especially Kane's shoes, I'm thinking, because he woke up with this woman every day.
Had a kid with her.
Yeah.
Has to look at his daughter and go,
You're missing out on your older brother because of...
your mom.
Yeah. Which fucking sucks. What I will say, it seems to me like Kane is a really good dad, and part of the reason that I feel that way is because there is no information on Kiara. Like, nothing. She...
Good.
Like, you know the year that she was born in and how old she was when Kyron went missing, but they're not putting her in front of the media. They're not using her to try and get sympathy, you know.
Yep. Well, it's probably
which is good.
Trying to protect her from her mom.
That is also a good point. So I don't, and I mean, it's not like she would remember anything, right? Like, she was 18 months old, but I hope that she's okay, is basically like it. I think that she probably is, because I think there would be an article if something had happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad that she's been spared the media storm.
Yeah. I mean, just what a fucking
mess. And there's a lot of, like, hearsay and stuff that I didn't mention. Things about, like, you know, the way that the extended family, especially, like, the previous spouses of the spouses, so, like, the previous spouses of, like, Terry and Tony, you know, how they, fit into this whole family and stuff like that. But I just didn't think it was necessarily important to the case. We already have enough names.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look into this, you will come across a lot of it. There's just a lot of drama in this. And there's a lot of drama that I don't think matters, frankly. But I think you probably guessed what we believe, but legally speaking, we probably can't say anything.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of looked something up real quick, and it was like, this one article I'm reading is trying to, like, paint her as a victim.
Yeah. Because the thing is, like, my thing with this is that if she genuinely didn't do anything, this fucking sucks for her. But she's acting sketchy as shit. Like...
Well, and you know what I find interesting, too, is so... In this article, it says, a full-time detective is primarily assigned to the case, he said, along with a retired FBI agent who has worked on the Federal Bureau's child abduction response team and is reviewing evidence in the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, when was this article posted? That was in 2016.
Yeah, they still... NamUs,
Yeah.
They still list a primary detective on the case. I just don't remember their name. But I am posting the link to the NamUs page as well on all our social media in the description and that kind of thing. So you can take a look there. It also has an email address that you can reach whoever, that... I guess NamUs, they have a specific person kind of assigned to specific regions that takes tips for certain regions. So they have an email address for that person for this case. But I don't want to give it on the podcast because I think it might change. I don't know how often it changes. So I am just going to post that link and you can go and get the most updated one. But this is a tough one.
I mean,
and I do think I think that there's probably a lot of personal stuff that, you know, has existed in this case that is not kind of brought up because it's personal and because it's probably part of the investigation as well. So I think this is one of those ones where I'm sure the sheriff's department is pretty sure that they know who did it and they just don't have enough evidence to make an arrest.
Just saw this, and I think you'll find this interesting. So this is a quote from Terry. She told People magazine in an exclusive 2016 interview, "I saw him walking down to his room. My vision of him is the back of his head almost at the door. That's what I see when I sit here and think about him. That's my last thought."
What does that mean?
That's...
Like, she's saying that as if it's poetic.
Yeah.
Like... But she did, on Dr. Phil, she did say the last thing I saw of him was the back of his head, you know, so.
Yeah, that's just, I hope that at the very least that if he's still alive and he's out there, that
he's happy.
He's okay and happy and, you know, is, you know, doing well.
Yeah.
But, you know, if...
He's old enough to remember what happened.
Not
or
necessarily.
He was old enough. I mean, except for, you know.
Extenuating situations. But if not, and someone harmed him, I hope that they find the remains and
get justice for him
and closure for the family.
So I'm going to post the pages for like his profile, I guess, on the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, on NamUs, and on the FBI page. The NCMEC and FBI page both allow you to submit anonymous tips. As per usual, I have flipped through the FBI one because it was the only one that I hadn't gone through before. I know that NCMEC, it doesn't even ask you for personal information. On the FBI page, or on the FBI tip thing, it does ask you for it, and it, like, when you first get to the page, it looks like it's required information, but you can actually, there's a decline button at the bottom, or not at the bottom, but, like, there's a decline, like, box, basically, next to first name, last name, phone number, that kind of thing. Yeah. So they want you to provide personal information that they can, so that they can follow up with you, but you can decline. So, and I want to make that clear. So the phone numbers for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office tip line is 503-261-2847. That's a U.S. number, so if you're outside of the U.S., which I doubt you'll be calling if you are, but you hit 1 first. For NamUs, it is 817-374-2765. And for NCMEC, it is 1-800-843-5678. So for NCMEC, that is actually 1-800-THE-LOST is a good way. Yep. The Multnomah County Sheriff's Office case number is 10-403516. That's 10-403516. And for NamUs, the number, like his missing person's number, is MP, like missing person. I can't believe I didn't put that together until just now. MP 7517. The easiest way to find his page on NamUs, if you don't want to click on the link, is to find the NamUs page and then search for that. It's the only way that I could find it, at least. So, this has been the case of Kyron Horman. And I also want to say this, I want to float it that we do have a email address at A Wild Mystery Podcast Appears, and we have a place where you can
we have like a website suggestion.
Yeah, suggestions, tips, that kind of thing on our website, which is awmpa.com. And
if you're not comfortable with reaching out to the sheriff's department or any of the resources that Ollie provided, if you provide us with tips, we can fill out that information.
Yep.
But I can't say enough how much my heart goes out to
this family.
To the family.
It must be a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I do hope that someday there is some closure, and if possible, some justice,
Yeah.
This has been the case of Kyron Horman, the disappearance of a 7-year-old boy in 2010 in Portland, Oregon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Wild Mystery Podcast Appears, recorded and produced by Ollie and Belle.
Please check out all of our social media where we have additional information shared. You can find all of those links at our website at awmpa.com.
We'd love to hear your feedback for our podcast, so be sure to rate and review.
Tune in next week for another episode of A Wild Mystery Podcast Appears.